by myself today. So sad. Anthony had stuff going on. Nato had stuff going on. I didn't plan ahead. I was like, do I really want to sit here and talk to myself? I did it once before, I think, and it was okay. But then I was thinking about, I was like, you know what? Lately, I've been dealing with something. I've been dealing with. I always talk about balance and how, I think the yoga balances the jujitsu and just the physical activity balances the writing and all these different things. But with balance, I often feel like, man, I got a kind of a dark side for sure, and then the side that pulls me back. So maybe I'll just let these two dudes battle it out today. So we'll have the one guy who wants to talk all kinds of shit and tell you all these stories and leave in all the gruesome parts. And the other guy was saying like, "Oh no, your daughter might be listening. Maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe I should only be putting out positive stuff because I'm going down that path now." Yeah, so we'll see where it heads. Uh, yeah, hopefully I will get out one more episode before Halloween. But in case I don't, let's talk about it now. I've been writing horror. I've been picking that up a bit. Took a little break from unlocking just because, for whatever reason, when an idea hits me, I want to jump on it. And I just happened to come across two of my older stories. I don't think neither of them no, yeah, neither had been published. They're both okay. And when I read over, I was like, I really liked the ideas, but I just completely rewrote them. So I spent maybe 2 days on each of those, 2 to 3 days on each of them. Which is a decent amount of time. I was like, okay, that was almost an entire week of my writing time. Um, but to be able to have two new pieces, like who knows what they'll be made into episodes or what will be done with them or when I'll release them. But I was like, they're cool little stories. I had fun creating them. That's probably one of the most enjoyable things. That and writing any kind of fiction. So it was a little break, and all I have to do is I'm going to probably finish up one more. Had another cool idea the other day. I'll put a limit on myself, and then I will jump back into unlocking the cage, doing the final stuff on that. Um, but this weekend should be kind of interesting. Oh, well, first, one cool thing. If I haven't mentioned it, Twisted Reunion is free on all platforms. So you can pick it up on Amazon or wherever you get your books. And it's doing really well right now. I haven't really advertised or anything like that, but it's sitting number one in Amazon's free horror short stories and really high up on the horror list, number 8 in short stories for single authors. So it's cool. That means a lot of people are checking it out. Man, that's what I want. I want people to read my stuff. I want to spread it. So, yeah, anytime I'm able to do something like that, I will. So I'm leaving it free till through Halloween, and so yeah, pick it up before then. Tell your friends if they like horror, check it out. The reviews have still been all positive, mainly. I think there was one person that absolutely hated it, but they could go fuck themselves. No, that's not nice. Um, my own mother would say that she hated it and give it a 1-star review. So, and I'm not gonna say that about her. So yeah, man. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. If you don't, you don't. There's tons of horror that I would never read. I just don't like it. I don't like getting grossed out. Same thing with lots of stuff I don't want to watch. I think we talked about that last week with The Walking Dead. I was like, yeah, just don't feel like watching it. Um, but with Twisted Reunion, I'm considering trying to take one of those stories and make it kid friendly. Because I'm doing a reading at Vroman's bookstore in Pasadena this Sunday. If you are in the area, know kids in the area that would want to check it out, yeah, definitely send them down. It's going to be Sunday at 12 o'clock. Should be fun. I'm doing it in the kids section. I told them 10 and over, so we'll see who shows up. The difficulty with trying to find make a story kid friendly is I have to leave out lots of the good stuff. Like the words aren't bad. Like I cut out all the cuss words and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, some of these stories is like how many prostitutes are in here, or drug dealers, or whatever else, and how many parents are getting killed. So I really got to take a look at this before I make a decision on how to try to funny it up or family it up. What's going to be interesting this week is going to be cool too, because tomorrow I'm going to be talking to the co-author of the Try Not to Die at Death Fest, or whatever we're calling it. That's the working title right now. But we're gonna figure out, finalize the path, finalize all the deaths, and really go on that. I was talking with my friend Marshall Stamper, who I do jiu-jitsu and yoga with, about, he hasn't written a book before, but I was like, well, he's got great ideas. He's a smart guy. He could come up with something cool. So I'm inviting a lot of my friends to do this with me, and I think we could come up with some awesome projects. So I'm going to be doing that one tomorrow with Glenn. We'll be figuring that out, and then on Friday I'll be meeting with Donna about Trying Not to Die in Brightside, finalizing that story. I spent a lot of time on looking at that the last couple of days, and really excited. I need to figure out exactly what I want to do with this series. Right now it's young adult. That's what I'll also be reading at Vroman's. But what is considered young adult? How adult can I go with it? Because if they are teenagers, I don't know. I want to write. I definitely want to push it. So we'll see. And some of the subject matter I'm thinking about getting into for later episodes, other Try Not to Dies, they're gonna be pretty controversial, and should be interesting. And that's pretty much it. No, so all I wanted to say was I just want to check in. I wanted to make sure I put out a scary story before Halloween comes. I know a lot of you guys actually enjoy those stories. I'm excited to be sharing the ones that T. Quillen just re-recorded. Man, such a better job. So I think that has to be approved from Audible, which should take another week or so, but then it'll be out. Then I'll start playing those stories as well. If you guys like this, you can pick it up on Each Down I Die, or in a couple weeks you'll be able to pick it up on Twisted Reunion. The complete thing will be coming out, and you get that on Audible or a couple other places. Or check my website. I'll try to switch out the stories a little bit more often. But hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Out there. Daryl glanced in the rearview and cocked a thumb over his shoulder. There she goes. Check it out. Man, keep your eyes on the road, Mike said, and then turned to look out the rain-streaked back window. The small cluster of lights comprising Baker was disappearing. In another 50 yards, the lights would completely vanish, leaving them with only their headlights and the occasional burst of lightning to alleviate the darkness of the desert. They followed the curve up the steep hill, and Daryl snuck another peek in the mirror. Exactly 79 miles to Vegas. Fine, but watch the road and slow down. Stop tripping, man. I got it. Mike leaned over and checked the speedometer. Drop it to 60. I'm barely doing 70. I don't care what the speed limit is. I can't. Daryl eased up a little on the accelerator, but not without restating his opinion. We're never going to get there at this rate. Relax. There's no rush. Daryl and Mike had been sleeping together for almost a year. Their families knew they were gay, but Jimmy didn't, and Jim made it over the next mountain. Mike put the phone away and leaned in the back seat, listening. Doesn't even have a CD player. You can deal with it for... And think about all the gas we're using. This thing probably gets 15 per gallon. Oh, now you're an environmentalist? Daryl on the accelerator. Slow it down, Mike ordered. Daryl kept his foot on the gas. Mike punched him in the neck. With a huff, Daryl brought it down to 60. A moment later, they reached the top of the mountain and began their descent. Daryl couldn't let it go. We're not going to get there till sunrise, and we're going to be easier to spot. Mike struggled to remain calm. He couldn't risk drawing Daryl into a shouting match when the hothead was driving. We're going to be really easy to spot if we get pulled over. And if you 3 weeks of playing Rent-A-Cop to make $1,500. You know what I mean. Trust me, I want you to start making the trip alone as soon as possible. I really don't want to get popped for violating. But first, a couple of things need to happen. Month. February at the latest. What else? Prove to me that you can chill on these trips. I'm putting my ass on the line, letting you make the run yourself. We're talking major money here. I can chill. I'm chilling. I like it when you put your ass on the line. Mike ignored the remark. No speeding, no reckless driving, no stopping anywhere but for gas, no unnecessary calls. Yeah, that's... Daryl cut himself off and looked out Matt's window. Craning his neck, his eyes followed something as they passed on the side of the road. What are you looking at? There was a car back there. Daryl checked the rearview mirror. They're so screwed. Mike looked out the back, unable to see through the rain. There's nothing. You leave your car on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere? Would your bones be found weeks later, picked clean, not a scrap of meat on them? You're an idiot. Daryl shook his head. I'm telling you the truth. There's something out there. Matt's cell phone vibrated. He told Daryl to shut up before he answered it.
Where the hell are you?
The gruff voice said. What's up, Jimmy?
I've been trying to get hold of you for the last 20 minutes.
We passed Baker about 15-20 minutes ago. We should... Hey, Jimmy? Jimmy, you there? Mike looked down at the cell's screen and shook his head. Frickin' T-Mobile. What'd he say? I don't know. Nothing. It's fine. Mike didn't want to think about Jimmy. He asked, So what were you saying about all the disappearances? You think it's aliens? Chupacabra? It's not funny, man. People die out here. I'm sure they do. Another vibration. Hold on, it's Jimmy again. He answered the call. What's up, Jimmy?
Did you hit the state line yet?
No, we're about 60 miles from Vegas, maybe 30 to the border.
What are you driving?
I don't know. It looks like a Dodge. Yeah, it's a Dodge.
A Dodge what?
Hey, Daryl, what is this thing? Mike asked. What model? Caravan. Just loud enough for Mike to hear, Daryl said. We could have had a Cadillac. Hear that? A Caravan.
What's the license plate number?
Mike opened up the glove box, pulled out the registration, and read off the number. Jimmy yelled.
You dumb shits. Pull it over.
What are you talking about? We're in the middle of nowhere and it's pouring.
Pull it over.
Jimmy barked. You're breaking up. I'll pull over at the rest stop. There's one up ahead a few miles. I saw a sign.
No, you ass clown. You've been made.
The signal faded, leaving Mike with a dead line. What was that all about? Daryl asked. Jimmy wants us to pull over. I think he said we're made. Are you kidding? We can't pull over. You said he thought he said we were made. Maybe he was saying something else. Like what? He wanted us to pull over. Call him back. Another vibration. This is him right now. Pull over while I have reception. Are you serious? Just pull over. I don't want to lose him, Mike said. What's up, Jimmy? You hear me?
Pull over, Matt. You've been made.
You sure? How do you know?
Paul got popped about an hour after you left. Vice swarmed the house and they knew what they were looking for. The only thing they found was the money, but Paul must have sold you out. Paul's girl told me about the bust, so I started monitoring police radio. They've got an APB out on the van. Ditch the cargo.
Tell me you're joking. Mike glanced over his shoulder, ready to see flashing lights coming up from behind them.
You ditch that stuff. Find someplace safe. Go to Vegas. Get another set of wheels and pick it up tomorrow night.
Where? Where am I going to stash it? I'm in the middle of the goddamn desert.
Somewhere someone else ain't gonna stumble onto it. And don't leave the van anywhere near it.
I know. Mike checked the side window, wished he could see more than a few feet through the sea of darkness. But how are we supposed to get to Vegas?
Use your fucking feet. Just don't do anything stupid. If you need to, you can crash at my pad.
Whatever you say, Jimmy, and thanks for the heads up. I'll find the place for this stuff, and I'll get back to you. As Mike hung up, Daryl asked, So, what's happening? Mike stuffed the cell into his pocket. We need to dump the cargo. Cops are looking for the van. Dump it? We don't have a choice. Well, they won't catch us. And if they did, it's my first offense. They'll let me go. We have 200 pounds. That's trafficking. If we get stopped, we're both screwed. Daryl shifted into park and took his foot off the brake. So what do we do? Where do we stash it? Mike thumbed toward the window. Somewhere out there. No way, man. That ain't happening. How about the rest stop? Too many people, and they've got cameras. Mike peered through the windshield. He spotted a line of cars a mile down the hill. Brake lights. They've already blocked off the road. You don't know that. There could be an accident. Daryl clearly didn't believe that, though, because he asked, You really think they're looking for us? It sure as hell isn't a coincidence. Let's get the stuff out of here before someone rolls by and spots us. I can't go out there. Mike shook his head in disgust. I'm not kidding. There's bad things out there. Bullshit. Even if there were, I guarantee there are worse things in prison. Daryl closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and let it out. When he opened his eyes, he pulled his Ruger SR-40 from his waistband, where he kept it concealed under his bulging belly. Mike reached over, pulled the keys out of the ignition. Put on your hood. Daryl leaped from the van without a word. Mike met him underneath the canopy of the open rear hatch. Are we going to bury it? Daryl asked. With what? I didn't pack a shovel. So where do we put these? Daryl asked, looking at the two huge suitcases. At least they were hard shell and not canvas. Those hills. Mike pointed toward a shadowy range running parallel with the road. But there's got to be some rocks where we can hide them. Daryl stared through the rain. You have any idea how far that is? No way. 100 yards or so. We'll be there in a minute. Come on. No way. That's at least 300. We'll be soaked. We're going to have worse problems than that. Mike dragged the first suitcase out of the car, surprised by how heavy it was, and then raised the wheel well cover. Before Daryl noticed, he grabbed the .38 Special he had hidden there and stuffed it into his coat pocket. Come on, it's letting up. It wasn't, but Mike was already crossing the muddy stretch of road that bordered the highway. Mike heard the second suitcase hit the pavement, and the rear door slam shut. Reluctantly, Daryl followed, but not without finding a new combination of curse words. The complaining didn't last long. Dragging 100 pounds through the treacherous terrain and torrential downpour wore them out. Halfway to the hills, Mike set his suitcase down in a clearing. He acted like it was so he could check on his partner, and not because of the burning sensation in his arms and lungs. He heard Daryl's grunts over the rain slapping the hard desert floor, but he couldn't see him. A loud hiss sliced through the air. Mike whirled around and backed up, looking for the serpent, his hand on the .38's grip, but he couldn't see a thing in the darkness. Still, the hiss sliced through the deluge. When Daryl entered the clearing a few seconds later, the hissing stopped. Daryl dropped his suitcase onto its side. He was breathing so hard Mike feared his overweight boyfriend would have a heart attack. "God damn, this is heavy. How much farther?" he asked, between gasps, looking past Mike toward the hills. "We got a way to go. I'm tired too, but we need to keep moving. This is still too close." "We aren't gonna make it." "What?" Mike stepped onto a rock, but couldn't see over the small hill that blocked their view of the highway. "Last I looked, they were all over the van. 3 cars. Mike scrambled up the rocky hill, the sight of flashing lights making him nauseous. Daryl asked, "Now what? They're going to be all over this area. What if we can make it to the rest stop and jack a car? That's the only thing I can think of." "They're going to be crawling all over it. They know we're close. The hills are our only shot." "So what then? What the hell do we do even if we make it?" "First off, we hide the suitcases. We can't get caught with this. They'll still bust me for violating, but that's better than the alternative." Mike tried to control his shivering. "Let's move before they get a helicopter out here. They'll know we're on this side of the highway." Maybe they'll think someone picked us up. No way. And watch where you're stepping. Mike grabbed the suitcase and dragged it up over a large rock. Snakes are out. Nah, they're not out now. The burning sensation returned to his shoulders. I know what I heard. Well, you didn't hear a snake. They hibernate in winter. Must have been something else. In no mood to argue, Mike pushed forward, leaving Daryl behind. Soaked and exhausted, Mike stopped after a few hundred yards. The rain was letting up, but that wasn't a good thing. Mike could see the cops still by the van, which means they could probably see him. The mountains, which he thought were hills, were still half a mile away. Mike crouched down, holding his head in both hands. He'd rest while Daryl caught up, and then they'd make one last run for the mountains. They could make it, he told himself. A hiss rustled in the bushes. He looked around. It wasn't rain. There wasn't a drop falling. The hiss grew louder. It sounded as if it were coming from two different directions. Mike stood and pulled out his piece. He wasn't scared of snakes, and he refused to get bitten and die lying on top of a suitcase of ecstasy. The clouds slid over and let the moon shine through. Even with its light, Mike couldn't see much. Sand, brush, rocks, cacti, and more sand. No snakes. He did see Daryl huffing his way up the slight incline, his face drenched, only this time from sweat, not rain. Once again, the hissing stopped. The chopper's out, Daryl said in between gulping breaths. He dropped the suitcase onto the damp sand and bent over, hands resting on his knees. We're screwed. That hill won't hide us much longer. We need to keep moving, Mike said. Daryl raised his arms over his head, something he must have seen an athlete do on TV. Only Mike doubted the athlete's belly hadn't poured over his belt. Come on, Daryl, that's enough. We have to hit the mountains. Mike left out that they'd already been there if Daryl had taken care of himself. I'm too tired. I'll leave you. Go ahead. Daryl sat on a rock. I can't move. I'll leave you in the dark with the cops and the snakes and whatever little boogie monster you think is out here. There ain't no snakes, I told you. Well, there's something out here hissing, and I'm leaving you with it. Are you coming? Hold on, goddammit. I never should have come. I didn't hear you bitching when I asked you before. You weren't complaining about making some cash. Mike picked up the suitcase, hoping it would be easier to carry than it was to drag. We get through this, and Jimmy will put you on any score you want. That finally got Daryl on his feet. In the 10 minutes it took to make it to the base of the mountain, the helicopter hadn't advanced much. It was too early for Mike to get his hopes up, but it looked as if he might make it out of this thing a free man. Daryl might not, but that was his own fault. If the fat bastard had taken care of himself, he wouldn't be on the verge of passing out as he tried to keep up. Now what? Daryl said. We hide the suitcases. Mike pointed to the small cave 20 yards uphill. In there. Without a word, Daryl began the ascent. Mike nearly ran into him when Daryl came to an abrupt stop right outside the opening. What the hell's the matter? Get in there, Mike ordered. Daryl whispered. It's dark. Mike shouldered past him. You give gays a bad name. I think I heard something. What? What could be out here? Mountain lion? Get your gun and watch your step. It sounded like some kind of hissing. Mike took a few steps past the entrance and turned around. I thought you said they were hibernating. They should be, Daryl stammered. Mike heard the low hiss, but pretended he hadn't. He turned back to Daryl. You want to make money, you want more responsibility, and you want to do the runs yourself? Why would Jimmy let you? You're afraid of the dark, afraid of snakes. What else are you afraid of, Daryl? Screw you. No, thank you. I don't do vaginas. Daryl finally grabbed his suitcase. Mike told him to take his too and put them as far back in the cave as he could. If you want your cut. Why don't we each take one? Because one of us should stay out here and keep an eye on that helicopter. Well, it looks pretty dark in there. If we both go in, we could get lost. At least you can follow my voice. I'll be right here. Come on, we don't have all night. Daryl groaned, but did as Mike ordered, and picked up his suitcase. I can't carry both of them, he said. Make 2 trips. Daryl disappeared in the cave's darkness. Mike sat on his suitcase and watched as the police helicopter circled the desert a few hundred yards away. After several minutes passed, he began to wonder if Daryl had decided to take a break. Mike took one step into the cave. Daryl, hurry up! The helicopter's getting closer. There was no response, so he cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, Daryl, can you hear me? Again, no answer. Mike picked up his suitcase and headed down the dark tunnel, using his free hand to feel the wall alongside him. After a few seconds, he sensed the tunnel widening into a cavern. He called Daryl's name once more. A prolonged hiss echoed through the cave. Slowly, Mike set the suitcase down and pulled the gun out of his coat. When he turned in a circle to pinpoint the noise, he looked out the tunnel and noticed the helicopter's searchlight was closer. No longer caring where Daryl was, Mike picked up his suitcase and headed for the closest wall. He tripped over something solid and slammed face first into the cave's hard floor. The hissing grew louder and seemed to be coming from multiple directions. Ignoring his bleeding chin and scraped hand, Mike leaped off the floor before the snakes could strike. He reached for his pistol, but it wasn't there. He got to his knees and felt the floor. When his hand struck plastic, he realized he'd tripped over Daryl's suitcase. What the hell's wrong with you? I could have knocked myself out. Daryl didn't answer. But even if he had, Mike wasn't sure if he could have heard him over the now deafening hisses. He prayed it was the cave's echoes, but it sounded as if he were surrounded. Mike reached for Daryl's suitcase and felt Daryl's arm draped over it. He squeezed Daryl's hand. Get up, man. He shook the arm harder and almost retched when it pulled away from the suitcase and fell onto his lap. The arm had been severed at the elbow. Mike reached out and couldn't feel Daryl's body anywhere. Mike threw the arm into the darkness and heard a grunt when it bounced off something. He scrambled on all fours toward the entrance. The searchlight illuminated the cave's mouth. A sinewy hand wrapped around his neck, cutting off his scream. Mike clawed at the scaly fingers, deafened by the hissing, unable to move. He stared straight ahead. The entrance was gone. He couldn't see outside, but he knew that the cops were out there. Getting caught meant 10 years locked in a 9x9 cell. But that decade was gone.